The City of Monona Planning Commission. Sonia, could you take the roll?
Acting Chair Moore.
Here.
Mr. Hamburg.
Here.
Ms. Thomas. Here. Mr. Stein.
Here.
Mr. Dorschel.
Here.
Mr. Ganzer.
Here.
Ms. Faxenelder. Holmquist are excused.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from October 23rd?
Second.
Second? Okay. Any changes to the minutes? All those in favor?
Oh, one. Yes, page 2. The first main paragraph, it's not so much a correction as a clarification. On the end of the sentence, it starts, "the rooftops are." Second line down towards the end, it says the rooftops are exempt from quality control. That gives the wrong connotation. That makes it sound like they're dirty, they just don't have to be cleaned. So I think it should be worded more like the rooftops are considered clean water, so are exempt from further treatment.
Okay.
Something along those lines, because if you weren't part of this discussion, you didn't understand, you'd think for some reason there was an exemption for some dirty water, which right now they're considered clean water.
Sounds good.
Any other corrections to the minutes? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Minutes carried. Appearances. Do we have anybody here? Do not have any forms tonight. Okay. We move on to unfinished business. First up is a public hearing on a request by property owner Joe Slade for approval of a zoning permit for exterior alterations and facade improvement grant project at 6324 Monona Drive.
Good evening. Hi. I think I have everything for you tonight except those 3D drawings. My architect was out of town and just got back, so I don't have them available, but the colors were depicted in the last drawings. But everything that I've added to the packet, I think, met all your requirements. Adding some product down on the lower ephes to break up the bottom part of the building. We showed the south.
There we go.
Yeah. We showed the south side of the building wrapping with the same rustic mountain cedar up on top, and the bottom, the current ephes wraps around the building and stops, and then that's brick. We're going to paint that to match the gray on the existing ephes on the other 3 sides of the building and the garage. Here's where we added the cedar product, which in your packet, that's the product that we actually produce ourselves, and that's an example of what we used at the bar. We will bring the colors from the building, the gray, the mountain cedar, and the white, and we'll bring some white into that, and then that'll be seal coated, and that's the cedar that we'll use to break up the ephes down below. So it's kind of a creative process when we do that, so because we make all that ourselves, so out of reconditioned wood. So the building, the colors that I don't have the depiction in the 3D drawings, but we were going to use the gray below. A mountain cedar was the product up above, which is shown right here. And that was depicted pretty good in the first 3D drawing that we did. And then below is going to be a gray. And I really haven't spec'd out exactly what gray we're going to use on that yet. But it will be similar to a color of that style right here.
Upside down.
Oh, well, that's the, okay, right there, good. And that goes nice with that cedar that'll be up above, so. I don't have an exact color on what that color will be yet. That we'll match that with Holman Lindsay, so. So that was the building. You guys had also asked for the lights. Did I show the lights last time? We're gonna do the Chevron hook up above. That's on above the garage showing here, along with in the front of the building above the signage. And then a sconce like that in the 2 locations by the doors here. So that was the lights, that was all in your packet, and Chris had asked for a tree in the front. So I had shown you a picture of a glory red maple, but after talking with John on Trees on Wheels, he says I need to do a celebration because that one won't live in the soil there, so. Any questions?
Do we have any questions?
We're still in public hearing?
Sorry?
We need to close the public
Yeah,
hearing if nobody...
Wait a minute. Is there anybody else that would like to speak on 6324 Monona Drive? Okay, great, then we'll close the public hearing. Next up, consideration of action on request by property owner Joe Lindsay for approval of zoning permit of exterior alterations and facade improvement grant project at 6324 Monona Drive. Sonia, would you like to open?
At the pre-hearing conference, the Planning Commission generally determined that the proposed changes were eligible for funding under the facade improvement program. Joe already summarized all the changes made since the last meeting. The Finance and Personnel Committee also approved the requested grant amount of $10,000, and approval is recommended tonight as outlined in the staff report.
Do we have any questions?
Move approval.
Second?
We have a motion? A second, okay. Any other?
Just one comment.
Yeah.
I think everything looks really good, and I was just
Thank
gonna
you.
say on the lights, you picked the smallest version of that, and that's maybe what you want, but once you pick something that's just the size of this piece of paper at 12 inches, once you get it up there, I don't know, just something to consider.
Yeah, there's 3 or 4 different sizes on this sheet, and I noticed that too, that my wife had referred to that size on there. I'm going, no.
Might start looking pretty small a bit,
Yeah.
but
Plus, we need the lighting.
food for thought there.
Right, so. And I'm more than willing to submit the 3D drawings when they're ready, and I can submit them to Sonia so they can be on file.
That's good.
So,
Yep.
yep, and I can do that. It's not a problem at all. That should be this week, most likely, so.
Terrific. Do I have any other? Yes.
I just comment, I think it's a nice touch having those Shepherd Crook lights on the front of your building, lighting your sign up. It ties in nicely with Monona Drive.
Yep.
I think that's a good call on your part.
That's where I saw them. All over Monona Drive.
Any other comments, questions, concerns? No?
No.
That being the case. You look like you were about to say something.
Nope,
No,
sorry.
you were just holding your
Yeah.
hand up. Okay, all right, great. Then, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Bye.
New business, public hearing on request by business owner Brian Welker for approval of a zoning permit for a new use as a fitness center in the building at 6900 Mangrove Lane.
Are you here representing? Yep.
Okay, come on up to the podium, Mr. Wood. You could be so kind as to introduce yourself to start.
I'm not Brian Welker.
Can we guess that?
He's out of town on vacation. I'm Sharice Carradine. I'm one of the head coaches at CrossFit Connects.
All right.
So sorry, this is new to me, so please,
Yes.
direction.
Just explain what you're going to do or what you're doing in the building.
Oh, sure. So the main storage part that used to be just a warehouse has been transferred over to a gym. So this is our 3rd location. Looking for bigger space, so we came here. We're a CrossFit gym. We do functional fitness, gymnastics, weightlifting, etc. And it's all small group classes inside there. And then in the future, down the road, we are looking to expand, change up the office part in the front for massage therapy, physical therapy, etc. But that's big plans for the future.
Do we have any others that wish to speak? It's a public hearing. Close the public hearing. Sonia, in consideration of action on request by business owner Walker for approval of a zoning permit for new use as a fitness center in the building at 6900 Mangrove Lane.
So the gym has actually been operating in the space for a couple of months, and we're not aware of the requirements for a zoning permit prior to occupying the building. So that's why they are here tonight. It was brought to our attention by the building inspector when shower permits were applied for to put showers into the building. A zoning permit's required because it's a change of use and the building was vacant for 6 months or more. So those are two triggers in our zoning code that require plan commission approval of a zoning permit. And again, because they're already occupying the building, I scheduled it for consideration of action rather than the typical two-step process with a pre-hearing conference. A couple of comments in the staff report. Parking seems adequate except for when there are the larger seminars and workshops where they could bring in up to 50 guests. However, those are relatively infrequent, and if the Plan Commission had concerns about that, we could probably add a condition, something along the lines of if it causes problems, Plan Commission reserves the right to review that further or perhaps limit the frequency of those events if it becomes a problem. Otherwise, approval is recommended as outlined in the staff report. And I did share these with Brian Walker, but didn't get to discuss them specifically with him before the meeting. The police chief recommended adding some sort of security camera system out there, and you might have some comments on that, or you might not, but I just wanted to point that out as well.
I'm not sure of his plans for the camera. So we're a smaller gym facility that it's only 1 hour long classes. So we're not open or accessible, only the coaches have access to the building. But he could be doing some follow-up on installing some cameras.
See, where was the chief talking about putting the cameras?
I don't know specifically, but he referred to the general isolated nature of the location and expensive equipment and things like that being unattended.
So you think he was talking about the parking lot?
I couldn't guess.
It sounded like he was more referring to internal cameras inside the building. Just for other gyms that have locker rooms and they have thefts and stuff out of the locker rooms, which we don't have for our members.
Questions? Yes, Chris?
Your large groups, when would that be? Is that on the weekends, at night?
It's if we're hosting an event.
Sure.
So
And when would that typically
it's
be?
maybe twice a year,
Okay.
once in the summer and once in the winter,
Weekend, during the week?
weekends.
Okay, so a large event twice a year on the weekend, that's a lot of business there. I suspect there'd be plenty of parking around that area. I don't think that would be a big issue. You know, we could always put a condition in if parking becomes an issue in the future. Hopefully you'll be incredibly successful and be busting out of the seam, especially since CrossFit comes here now for the, whatever is worldwide
Yep, for the
championships. That
next-
doesn't
yep,
hurt you at all,
For the
does it?
next 2 years, it's actually been really exciting. Last
Yeah.
year was pretty amazing.
The police department recommendation was for theft, especially like from locker rooms and such, and they don't have a locker room, so I'm not sure how we feel about the requirement for that.
I think I'm fine with removing it. Also, having heard just some comments that you guests have limited access to the space.
Perhaps leaving it as if it becomes an issue in the future, it may be required.
Yeah, it strikes me that if there was a theft of a lot of stuff, your clientele would be pushing you to be doing something.
Absolutely.
Rob, do you have any?
I think it's a fine use for the space, no real issues.
Dale?
It mentions on here, Mark, the owner of Forward Electric in the building, owns most of the buildings on that street. It says that overflow parking is available, so it's really not an issue. No, I don't have any comments.
I don't have any problems.
No problem.
Make a motion.
Chris?
move approval with conditions 1 through 4 as written by staff. Condition 5, change it to if a security becomes an issue in the future, a security camera system may be required for police department recommendations. And condition 6, that parking should be monitored, and if it becomes an issue in the future, it may be reevaluated.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Yes.
I'd like to add, I think it's great to bring more people into the city because you're definitely a destination type of business, so bring people into Monona, and I think the more businesses we get pulling people in, the better off the rest of the businesses are, so I think it's great to have that.
Thank you. They leave hungry, so.
Well, that's good.
Make good
Yeah,
healthy
There
restaurants.
you go. Okay. Anything else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Public hearing on request by Dan Bertelson,
Pardon?
Remax
He does
Preferred, for approval of zoning
they-
permit for exterior alterations at the former Bank Mutual Building at 5320 Monona Drive. Welcome.
Dan Bertelson, I'm one of the co-owners of Remax Preferred. We have a 12-office real estate brokerage in Dayton County and the 5 surrounding counties. And we are looking to move our headquarters. So we've been in Fitchburg for 17 years before I even owned the company, and we've been leasing there that entire time and in a pretty nice Class A building. And we would like to take the old Bank Mutual building and first and foremost, make it look like a commercial building instead of a house. And then pretty much just bring it back up to speed with 2017. It needs a lot of work. So it's the building's in great shape. We like the location, but it needs a complete facelift. So it's you can see the plans. We're going to try and save as much as we can, but it's it really does need a roof restructure just because of the way that it's built in order to maybe bring some windows into it that look a little bit more commercial. We're not going to be able to completely get rid of the fact that it kind of was built to look like a house way back when. But we think we'll be able to do a pretty good job. It'll be about a $250,000 worth of improvements is what we're estimating right now after our purchase price of the property. We'd be getting started on this as soon as you guys could humanly let us. We have a lease that is up in early spring. We have to be out of our building by the end of April. So we're really hoping to be able to try and make that timeline. It'll be a lot of work, but I think we can work on the interior now and then maybe be finishing up the exterior and some of those other things by spring. So yeah, question?
You'll like it better here than in Fitchburg.
Well, I'm a little confused in Fitchburg right now, so that's just, I can just leave it at that. And I'm born and raised in Oregon, and now I live in the town of Dunn, so Monona is my other city, so I'm coming
Good.
through here every day. But my mother-in-law, who's my business partner, she is down in Brooklyn. So Fitchburg made sense for us before, but we recently acquired offices in Johnson Creek, and yes, I know it is spelled Creek, but they say Crick, so you don't want to get it screwed up. But when you go out there, and then Fort Atkinson, so actually the city of Monona is directly in the middle of all 12 of our offices now, and we stretch, we're going to be opening one in the Dells, but then we also have one that's way up in Reedsburg, like Laval area, so that's our furthest northwest. And then we only go as far as the west side of Madison, as far as the western side. But.
Anybody else that would like to speak before I close the public hearing?
I'd like to ask a couple questions. I got a letter.
Come up to
Come on up to the podium if you would.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Rick Radeville. I'm a backyard neighbor to the future owners here. And I got a letter as to what was going on tonight, so I just came down to check and see what's going on. So I guess I'd like a little more explanation as to what the function of your place is, what you plan on, when the plans will be, that kind of thing.
Sure.
It's, I'm sure we'll get along fine.
We're a pretty quiet business, so we have, what this specific location will be a little bit different in that it's our headquarters, so we have a lot more visitors than we do dailies. But our daily employees, we only have about 5 or 6 that'll be there every single day, and then we have agents that come and go in flats. So our head, basically, the people in that building are almost 100% administrative as far as for office use, so they're either processing checks or paperwork, stuff like that.
Pretty much 9 to 5 type of.
Very much 9 to 5. Our hours would be probably actually 8:30 in the morning is when our first admin would get there. You won't see cars or people starting to show up until 10. That's pretty much real estate. And then we'd be closing at 5:30 every night. Every once in a while, we would do trainings in the evenings, but they'd be inside. It would be our people again. They're not coming for a party. They're coming for a training and then going home after a couple
Well, there's
hours.
nothing wrong with a good party. But what about landscaping, maintaining the property?
So right now, the landscaping hasn't been taken care of since they built it, so everything around the building is sloping towards the building, because I think it's settled and they just never touched it in the last 30 years, is at least the way it looks. So we're gonna have to pretty much completely redo that, where the drive-through is right now, to get enclosed in. And it doesn't show the back side of the drawings yet, it will at the next meeting, but our plan is to have one like thermal pane glass garage door that would open on the back side of that drive-through, that would just allow for a screened area. And since you're a neighbor, you could completely come over and hang out in it. We should have some leisurely space right there that we can open up in the summertime and actually have a large window or whatever. But aside from that, the back of the building, other than the color and maybe the roofing material changing from the architectural brown 3D that it is now to perhaps a metal roof or something that we're going with that'll last a heck of a lot longer now. But we'll have to we'll still have to submit all that part yet. We're not quite that far.
He can have mine, I'll share with
Oh, sure. So you can take this with
you.
you.
You can take that with you.
So this is kind of an idea on the front right here of just, these are fake dormers that are on there right now. So if we take that down in the back, that's from the one chimney for the fireplace. Bring the dormer in like this, that'll make it look a little bit less like a house from the front.
Sure, yeah.
This part here, we thought about squaring off, but aside from that, it's.
Okay, yeah, that's,
You can take that for sure.
okay. I think that answers my question. Thank you.
If you have more, certainly I'll give him the card or whatever too.
Okay, that sounds good, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing section. Move to the pre-hearing conference on the request by Dan Jordan, Remax Preferred, for approval of zoning permit for exterior alterations at the former Bank Mutual Building at 5320 Monona Drive.
Again, any exterior alterations require plan commission approval of a zoning permit, which is the reason we're here tonight. The plans submitted were very preliminary, so it's difficult to see exactly what's proposed, but as Dan stated, their timing was a little bit tight, so we needed to get them on the agenda for a pre-hearing conference. So one of the comments was definitely more detailed plans, and then the plan commission would review them for consistency with the Monona Drive urban design guidelines. And I also had a note about submitting a more detailed landscape plan if you did have plans, and it sounds like you
Saw
do.
both those things on there, yeah. That sounds really great, and actually, I'm really open to the feedback part. I've been in Monona for a very long time, and I drive around, but I'd be lying if I said I've been paying attention to the urban design plans and stuff like that. Any suggestions that you guys have, we're wide open to it. This is my wife's first solo design project. She's helped with many, many other projects that we've done. Our newest building that's just completing up right now in Oregon turned out pretty darn amazing, and she did a great job on it, but this is a different town, and it's got a different look and certainly a different style than Oregon, so we're trying to keep the main part of the building. I mean, I'm not saying we don't want to overspend. We want to invest the money so that, it's going to be a newer looking building. The last thing we want to do is put a bunch of, cosmetics in this and make it look really good, and then I'm still stuck 15 years from now with a building that still looks really out of date. So we're trying to balance that, It's hard because the interior needs all the money, and the exterior is what I have to change. So it is a little bit of a challenging project, but I think we're going to be able to get it done in a good way. It's just the ceilings are low. And they're old 8-foot ceilings with a drop ceiling in it, so we're going to have to get creative with light, which is the reason for the dormers in the front. No one will be coming and going from the front because no one does now. The parking lot is all in the back. The only thing, as far as I have to say about landscaping right now, is Really like to change the landscaping up a little bit, so maybe all the neighbors from the neighboring apartment building don't walk through the property constantly, because there's some pretty decent trails that just, obviously, they take the shortcut through because hasn't been anybody there all summer and, whatever, so we probably maybe try and fix that up, or maybe put in pavers or whatever, if that's how we want people walking over to Walgreens, but that was about the only thing I thought of on the landscaping side of things. And because that fence next to the apartment comes right up to the sidewalk in there, we have a one-way driveway system there, so that's one thing to consider. We have to go in the one side and then out through Walgreens. It's hard to see our driveway, so I would love some suggestions from you guys on, it's easy enough for us to say it's the next driveway right after the gas station, but man, they'd still miss it, I think, a lot, because that fence comes right up and you almost don't see our building until you get right on top of it. We considered that before we put the offer in, so I'm not asking you if I can cut anything down or anything like that, but if you have any suggestions on how we could mark our driveway or something that would be not only a safety kind of thing, so people aren't jamming on the brakes to try and get into our place, but from aesthetics or the way it looks too. I haven't had a good idea of that, so.
Given you have a drive-through off the end, do you have a sense of what you're going to do with that lovely?
So the drive-through on the end, I think the way we'd like to do it now, by the way, the next meeting, we'll have actually everything done,
Sure.
so we'll have full interiors too. But the space that is the drive-through right now, if we couldn't enclose that, the whole reason why Sonia had mentioned that I'm in a hurry, and it's only because I have to close in December. I have to close before the end of the year, or they won't sell it to me for the terms that we have right now. So that's why we had to hurry. If I can't enclose that area for more square footage, this building isn't even big enough for us. So from that standpoint, I would not purchase the building if we couldn't enclose it in. All we see is using it for is actually, it's quite a large cafeteria/meeting space. That's where we would have our largest single room other than the basement. And then my wife and her dream is just to be able to have a garage door that opens up and it's all screened in so that we can open it on really, really nice days. But from that standpoint, that's just something we wanted. It's not a need. And then in the back side of the building, which there's not good pictures for, there's currently 2 entrances. We would keep the main entrance, but then I think we would actually make the other back entrance also a little bit more accessible for our staff and stuff, because right now it just kind of looks like an old side door. Because there is no front traffic to this building, other than I suppose if someone did walk to our office, but I guess I don't see that happening all that often, so. And then the back parking lot, I don't know, it looks to me like we just getting it patched in a little bit and sealed. The front parking lot's been redone recently, so as far as the condition of the rest of the landscaping, which is blacktop, it looks in really good shape. You probably actually, you're over the line. I didn't look at the trees really good to see how much attention they might need as far as, the big ones, but.
There hasn't been much activity there for many years,
Right.
so.
They probably need to be thinned out then or whatever, but aside from that, I know good tree people, so. But
Any questions for Dan at this point, this pre-hearing? Yeah, Chris.
Well, first, I would like to say, I think it'd be a good business for Monona. Again, you're a destination business. You bring people into the city, and we love that. So I love to see you here. I think as far as enclosing the drive-through, why not?
Right.
I see no reason not to do that. I can't imagine why we wouldn't allow that. It's hard to say. I didn't know you wanted to try to get a two-way circulation, but looking at your plan briefly, it would be rather hard to get.
We would love to have just gotten it down to a two-way, but no matter which direction it is.
You could if you didn't close the drive-through.
Yeah, well, and if we went straight back out, but then we'd literally have to make another driveway on Monona Drive, and I'm pretty sure Sonia almost gasped when I said that, so. It
seems like you have more than enough parking for what you want to do, so I would think in the future, if you need to expand, you have ability to expand to the south and to the east.
Well, and I'm not sure on how many spots versus what, currently what we wrote down. We put more staff on there than we have currently, but we also had just gotten information that there's a lot of changes going on in the whole CVS Walgreens world, especially right here in our area. That was a question I was going to wait till the end to ask, but I did have two community questions that I just thought I'd ask about. And one was, have you guys heard anything in regards to Walgreens' longer-term plans? Because certainly if they ever needed to expand, then it could work out to where we'd share parking. If we have extra parking, I'd like to at least put that out there now. If they were going to remodel at some point or do something, I know their building's not quite that old, but there is some things moving, I guess, a lot in that industry right now.
Right now, for the staffing you've described, you have way more parking.
And way more than we need, right.
So-
So like if it made sense though, for somebody's trying to do a project neighboring, and then I have no idea too, I guess my other question would be, has there ever been any conversation with the board or anything in regards to the gas station or the apartments that are next door? Has anybody ever even mumbled about those places or anything? Okay.
They're happy.
Good deal. Good enough.
As far as your architecture, it's really hard for me to comment on tonight because it's really hard to try to figure out what you're even thinking. So we do want to see the architecture and the colors, and it's nice to give an applicant a little feedback before you come in for a final approval, but it's rather difficult tonight given what we have.
Understood.
We would be interested to see what you're going to be doing with the landscaping as far as any changes, or if you have some fix-ups. And the parking lot, again, you have adequate parking for what you need to do.
Good deal.
So that's it for me.
Kathy?
My general comment is, I think we're all excited that you're coming. We're glad. My suggestion, and you should learn, if you make friends with your neighbors. So find out who lives behind you and send them all a letter and say, this is what we're doing. If you have questions, call us here.
Sure.
And he can probably tell you who lives back there. Because keep your neighbors happy, you keep us happy.
Absolutely.
Well,
I was born and
sort
raised
of.
in the town of Dunn and grew up in Oregon, so it's not a whole lot different down there, so. At least as far as being neighborly.
But that's looking good so far. I mean,
Sort of the same comments. I'm all for the investment into the building and that you're moving in. As far as comments on what you're going to do, I look forward to
Seeing more.
giving a lot more feedback to the next meeting.
Great. Dale?
Well, just a note to the designer about those horizontal windows on the new dormer up above. And I think when you move this newer color rendering, you're going to see that maybe they're a little bit uncomfortable and really inconsistent with every other window on the building.
The red.
I would encourage you to, to stay with what you have going on down below, up there, just not the same size, but closer to square. And having the panes vertical.
I think the idea, and not that, I don't even disagree with you because I'm not going to design it, but I'm actually trying to stay out of this one from a design aspect the best I can. But I think the whole reasoning behind going to that was actually to transform the look of it a little bit because of those square windows and the way that they are. Man, is it hard to not make that thing look like a house unless we really do a huge remodel on that roof, which we're okay with spending some money on a new roof, even though that's actually the hard part to chew off. The roof is actually the thing that's in the best shape. So it's kind of hard. It's like that's the thing I want to mess with the absolute least because it's in the best condition, but yet in order to not make it look like a 1978 house, I don't know how else to really do it, but I will totally let them know that.
I have no problem with the enclosure, and I join everyone in welcoming you to Monona. I would like to see what the final landscape plan is, and it might be interesting if you could put a little bit more landscaping up by the street, facing Monona Drive.
Yeah. Do you guys have this do you guys have some people recently who, like, you've given some attaboys to as far as, like, within the last couple of years that have redone? Some that you can think of for us to go look at?
the bank does a really nice job, don't you think? I think Monona Grove Bank does really well. That's just my personal view, but
Sure.
but I always go by and say, wonder who did this, it looks good.
So,
That's all.
Okay. Great. Chris?
We didn't really talk about it, got sidetracked, but I think the chair's question on your drive-through is you are going to be taking out the pavement leading up to the drive-through and reconfiguring that so we don't just have a massive asphalt sitting in front of a building facade, right?
Correct. There's
Says it's being removed.
the blacktop to the rear would actually just stay.
Right.
Because it would just still flow, but everything to the front would just get recontoured to the curb.
But it just says remove for a little square up there, so
Yeah.
I'm going to assume you're not going to leave.
Well,
that
and the
big
final
sweeping-
plans that the bank has on file actually don't include the new driveway that goes into Walgreens. So whenever that took, I don't know when that.
Went on the drive reconstruction that was
There you
reconfigured.
go. So that wasn't that long ago, but when that turned, there would still be a bunch of blacktop that we have to remove
Yeah.
and put in landscape
So
for
that'd be
sure.
good to see. And then I noticed on your elevations, you have a basement there?
There is,
Yeah,
and
that's what it
actually
looks
it's
like.
very important to us, so.
What's your intention for the basement?
So the corner, as you face the front, you'll notice, you got the drive-through all the way off to the left, but in the very, very corner there's a little small, currently right now, like a small octagon window. That whole stairwell in that corner, we're actually going, and you'll see it in our new plans, that corner is actually gonna get built up a little bit and all made into glass and windows so that we can get as much light into the lower level as we can. We need one whole half of that lower level actually to stay kind of dark because it's a training room and there's screens and all this other stuff. But a good portion of our administrative staff will actually be housed in the lower level on the other side, and there'll be a small kitchen downstairs. So the issue with that piece where there's just this tiny little house octagon window right now, that'll be almost all glass in our next picture that we show you. We won't have to move the stairwell, which is what we originally thought we were going to have to do in order to bring light downstairs, but we're actually just going to bring it into that one corner now. The stairs will actually be, they're single post pieces of steel that have giant lumber sitting on top of them, so you can see through them. So they'll pass a lot of light down through the stairwell and they'll still have a landing. So essentially what we're going to do is the current stairwell that's been there this whole time will stay exactly the same. It's just everything will be see-through by the time we're done with it. And we're hoping that's going to get enough light all the way into that corner because if you notice too, this roof comes down to 7 feet like a ranch. So if you do walk up to the front of it right now, I can almost jump and hit my head on the gutter. And so that part we'd almost like to try and get rid of too, either by ending it sooner and getting rid of that porch so that it's squared off. But right now, if you do walk up to the front of the building, it's very, very low, just because it's the overhang comes down. So I'm not really sure how, I guess, from that standpoint, you guys will have a lot more to look at next time. And we had to do our best because we wanted to at least get in front of you guys, so.
And then we'll have floor plans for both levels?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Anything else? I would just echo what everybody else has said. Welcome. Hope it works out, and I look forward to seeing much more detail.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Consideration of action on signed permit request by property owner Dale Ganzer for one off-building sign for Nuclear Labs at 6915 Raywood Road and one off-building sign for Phoenix Nuclear Labs at 2555 Industrial Drive.
Any questions?
How close is it to the road? No, I'm just
Okay.
giving you a bad time.
I'm like, Kathy, you gotta at least turn the page. They're both going in, actually, obviously, I only own one of these buildings. Mark from Forward owns the other one. So both the signs are going in existing landscape areas. Both of them will get readdressed in the spring. Mine building by me and the other building by Phoenix. Though they have asked me to get these up before the frost. Just moving into my building right now, which is going to be their sales area, really, all the customers and everything will be coming into that building. So honestly, that's all I have to say.
That's all you have?
Oh, Sonia, or staff, or Sonia, referenced the term tagged on line down below, which I know that has come up before actually with me. kind of separate them, and I guess it's kind of the same thing Sonia said, I definitely separate those between advertising and information and clarification for a building. So I certainly do not consider this advertising. So I don't know how you guys feel about that. That came up with my signs, if you recall. Openwood Studios and Maywood Development both had a clarification line on them, as I call it, as opposed to the example Sonia used was good, whatever it was. But like if someone puts, best hamburger in the world, that's a little different than clarification.
Sonia, do you have anything?
The signs meet the dimensional standards in the code, and approval is recommended.
Move approval.
Second.
Any other discussion, questions? Yeah, signage. We're good?
I don't have any problem with the explanatory words in this particular.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're training her right.
Takes us to reports of staff, commission members.
I'll go ahead. The next meeting is December 11th. Items on the agenda will have Remax Preferred returning with their changes on the Bank Mutual building. And I was contacted by an architect that will be designing a new mausoleum in the Roselawn Cemetery, a little bit different proposal than we usually review here, but because it is new construction, new structure, that comes to Plan Commission for review as well. Actually, did you guys want to start first with any questions on the spreadsheets? The Plan Commission requested that this come back here, and again, this is just a spreadsheet that I use to track compliance with approved zoning permits. I don't really have a whole lot to point out except for the Starion Financial sign that's in right-of-way needs to be addressed soon, so I'll be contacting them as soon as possible. And then Cozy Home, number 11 on the list, you'll notice that the changes that they made to the building were not as substantial as were approved in their plans. They decided just to paint the building. I think they might have had some issues with timing and contractors, so they decided just to do the simple painting at this time, but they won't be getting the grant for that, of course.
Any other questions on the spreadsheet, Sonia? I'd like to see you use smaller font.
Yes.
Next time, if you could just get the font down a little bit smaller.
I can.
It was nice to see. It's nice to see again, and I was actually surprised by how few outstanding ones you had out there, but it is nice to catch up on them, because I'm sure we all get asked by members of the community what's going on with this or that, and it helps us refresh what's happening out there.
Sounds good.
So, thank you.
Anything else, Sonia, from staff reports?
So I mentioned the Remax Preferred and the mausoleum on the December 11th meeting. That's the last meeting of the year. As far as riverfront construction, the sewer relocation project will be completed this week or next, finishing up last items on that. On the demolition project at the riverfront, you'll notice, obviously, that EDS is mostly down. Next, they're starting on Inland Marina, and then abatement is occurring in the Bridge Lounge, and then that will be the next building to be demolished. Chase Bank has announced that they'll be relocating they'll close the bank in their current location January 20th and then reopen in the old Radio Shack building on January 22nd. So demo would start on that shortly thereafter, as soon as we can get in. So therefore, construction for the Phase 1 project by Galway will not start until March 1st approximately. So that's a little bit later than was originally anticipated by about 4 months. So that's riverfront updates. And then on the ordinance changes, Plan Commission sent a recommendation to City Council about the historic conservation ordinance. One of the most substantial change was that property owner authorization be required. City Council decided to go with the Landmarks Commission's recommendation instead of Plan Commission. So that was adopted without requiring owner consent. Landmarks Commission does have a new draft ready, and that's going to be sent to the city attorney. And then we'll get that back on Plan Commission, probably first meeting in January.
So they can, I'm sorry, I missed the other meeting, but, so, the way it stands now, they could designate a landmark, you can't do anything to your house if you're the owner?
You can nominate a landmark and designate it without the owner agreeing to that.
And what kind of restrictions does that put on an individual? I say that living in a house that has a potential to be a landmark, that's going to be a tear-down house. There's no-
Right. Try to speak from memory. It would require, just like it always has, review by the Landmarks Commission. So the proposed changes would have to go there for review. The Landmarks Commission would make a determination of whether it detrimentally destroys the historic nature of the building and those sorts of things. It makes like 3 determinations.
So what if somebody wants to tear the house down?
There's a new section in the code that you'll see when it comes here, and it outlines, it basically implements like a moratorium on the demolition for a period of 6 months and encourages a review between the property owner and the Landmarks Commission about whether they would issue that demolition permit. And then that would, if the two can't agree, the two parties can't agree, it gets sent to City Council who makes the final decision.
Who holds the property owner harmless?
That was our problem here, it's the loss of value. Somebody can do that to
The
you.
cost to me is $500,000.
Definitely excellent concerns. I don't have all the information right now to
I mean,
resolve the concerns.
that is atrocious.
It will be back here for review. You'll have the opportunity to
But there's nothing, I mean, it's absolutely atrocious what it does to an individual property owner's rights, from my perspective. If I knew a good lawyer, I'd ask a good lawyer their opinion.
Well, we're always available.
We actually agreed, but you have to lobby your city council members.
Or sue them.
I can just speak from the standpoint of having sat in the council meeting where it was discussed. My understanding, certainly when it was brought up, is that that the current statute would not, while the Landmarks Commission would have review, the current statute would not limit a property owner's ability to do work on their property, or for that matter to demolish it. So in other words, landmarks typically would say that you had to keep a building in an exact state reflective of the historic nature of their property, and in our case, our statute doesn't dictate that. So the confines on the, it's felt that the confines on the property owner would be far less than might be typical in a landmark situation, and further that the whole point of landmarks designation is to obviously be identifying properties, not just residential, but properties that are critical to the overall historic value of the community, so that
I also find it interesting that people who own properties that may be considered landmarks were not notified of this changing legislation. Like we do with other kinds of things when we're doing them, we notify people so they can come, so they know about it. And there was no notification, either from the council or from landmarks.
Has it been
Well, it's
passed,
still
or are we
in
getting
progress.
you said we're getting a new draft of it, why?
So yeah, just a reminder on that. The changes that were passed this past October, that was part of that whole one-year process where we recodified the whole code book. Now the Landmarks Commission is making these last tweaks because they want to become a certified local government and they have to have a compliant ordinance in order to be that. So it's coming back again. I also invited Joe DeRose from the Wisconsin Historical Society to come and answer questions, and I think it might be a good idea to see if Bill Cole would be available to come too.
I think it would be good to notify people whose properties
And that
may
as
be
well.
affected.
How do you
Or
determine?
at least those that Lincoln has slept in.
Yes.
Well, you ask the Landmark Commission what they
That's a
might
no-brainer.
consider. There are old homes. I could name you half a dozen of them, the Jan Marshall Fox, all kinds, the farmhouse. I could name you all kinds of them right off the top of my head.
Have they weakened our landmark ordinance, because we used to enforce it here at Plan Commission. That's been transferred to Landmark Commission, but in the past, we've had stuff come here, they can't do anything on the exterior without our approval. So is that the case now with Landmark? Because if it is, we were, I always felt bad for the people. We were telling them what they could do for minor modifications to their home. So if it hasn't been weakened, then that is the case. And if somebody else nominates your home and says, I think that's important for the community, I understand the community values. I understand us preserving what's important in our community, but I also believe if we're going to take value from somebody, then there should be at least some negotiation, that you can't just take the value of their property away and just say, well, it's too bad, we think it's important, so you're going to have to keep it the way it is.
That authority rests with the Landmarks Commission.
That's what I thought, which we used to have. So they could nominate it, accept it as a landmark, and tell you can't change it.
Sort of correct. The Landmarks Commission makes a recommendation on the designation. City Council has the final authority of whether to designate it or not, but then review authority on architectural
If the city council
changes.
does, then the review goes there, and they can tell you what you can and
That's
cannot do with
correct.
your home. So that is taking a value.
It's tremendous value.
Bill Cole has other comments on that about whether the city actually has liability on that, which I think is different than the point you're making of just the
Sure.
impact to the property owner. So all those things, I think, are good points and can be discussed further. I'm on both committees,
Right.
so.
That's why it's good to have you here.
Any,
Is that it on the landmarks ordinance questions? Anything else? I wanted to offer, this is what a printout looks like of the new zoning code, if anyone wants one. It's 40, 50 pages front to back. Anybody else? Should I make one for everybody?
I would take one.
Okay.
I need something to read at night. So, anything else before I entertain a motion to adjourn? Yes, Chris?
It's not really a request for information as much as just, if anybody hasn't noticed, you remember all the pains we took when Qdoba got built and preserving the oak trees, and there's an arborist, he checked them all. If you haven't noticed, they're taking down the trees that were supposed to be in good shape, but they were going to preserve them. But what we talked about during that approval was we were getting too close to the root zones. I see they've already died. And so I just think we should take a lesson from that when we're working on a property. We really think there's some really majestic oak trees we want to save. You just can't disturb that close to the trunk of an oak tree. You can't get in that root zone and expect it to live with that much construction going on. And I think in that case, it could have been fenced off better. There could have been less disturbance around the roots. And I think it's obviously too late there, but it's a lesson we should learn as a commission is if we're going to try to save some of these really majestic old trees, what we have to require during construction.
Thanks for bringing that up. I just noticed that at 4:30 today and asked Steve Doran, who's still the property owner there, and he said ATC contacted them to remove them because they're dying more now with
With the
construction, and it's the oak wilt disease or whatever it was, and/or construction activity, he said, and they needed to remove them because.
But if you remember, the arborist looked, and those were the really good ones.
Yep.
They were going to live. It's the construction that weakens them. ATC would like to cut down every tree that ever grew if they could.
Well, the oak will kill them, or will kill them.
It will. It will, once they get weakened like.
But they might have been susceptible because of construction.
That's your official position.
That's my official position.
Any other information, any other questions before I entertain a motion to adjourn? Do I have a motion to
Move
adjourn?
adjournment.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.